Welcome to Study Time, a televised home learning program produced by Rwanda Education Board.
Hello students, welcome to TV learning programs. I'm teacher Aggrey, teacher of economics. Today I'm going to learn with senior 5 students. And we are still on unit 5, which is money. And our lesson today, learners of senior 5, we are going to talk about demand for money or liquidity preference and the reasons for demand for money. Before I take you to today's lesson, there are questions that I want us to do, first work out, revision questions about what we learned in the previous lesson. And there are 2 questions that I want us to work out. The first question is, given that a country's total income is Rwandan francs 60,000 billion, and its total consumption is Rwandan francs 48,000 billion. Calculate the APC. Calculate the APC, the average propensity to consume. Calculate APC. Calculate APC. APC stands for average propensity to consume. Average propensity to consume. Calculate the APC, which is average propensity. Average propensity to consume. Average propensity to consume. That is APC. The total income, we are given total income, which is Rwandan francs 60,000 billion. That is the total income given. The total income is the total income. The total income is 60,000 billion. We are given 60,000 billion in the question. That is the total income. And its total consumption is Rwandan francs 48,000 billion. The total consumption is 48,000 billion. 48,000 billion. That is the amount that was consumed out of 60,000. 48,000 is the amount that was consumed out of 60,000 billion, which is the total income. And how do we get average propensity to consume, learners? You remember what we learned in the previous lesson. To get average propensity to consume, the formula, we said, to get average propensity to consume, we get consumption divided by the total income, divided by income. Because it is expressed as the ratio of consumption to income. Now, to get average propensity to consume, we shall get the consumption, the amount that was consumed, we divide by the total income. And the total consumption is 48,000. What was consumed out of the total income is 48. Average propensity to consume, we shall get the consumption, because consumption is 48,000. 48,000 billion, we divide by the total income, which is 60,000 billion. Divided by 60,000 billion. We cancel the zeros. These are 3 zeros. We cancel them. Now it is 48 out of 60. We can convert it into decimals. Learners, hope you have your calculators. If you get 48 divided by 60, you will get 0.8. Now, the fraction of what was consumed out of the total income is 0.8, or 48 out of 60. That is the fraction. Our average propensity to consume is equal to 48 out of 60, or 0.8. Because average propensity to consume, it is the fraction of the total income that is consumed. That is how we define average propensity to consume. Now, the fraction of the total income that was consumed is 48 out of 60, or 0.8. Then, the second question The second question, a woman has a disposable income of 480 francs and spent 360 francs. What is her average propensity to save? Let me repeat the question. A woman has a disposable income of 480 francs and spent 360 francs. What is her average propensity to save? How do we get the average propensity to save? To get the average propensity to save, do you remember, learners, what we learned in the previous lesson? How do we get the average propensity to save? To get average propensity to save, we get saving divided by income. It is saving divided by income. Saving divided by the total income. The disposable income, the amount of money after taxes, is 480 francs. And spend 360. We are not given saving in the question. We have to first look for saving. The disposable income, and how do we get saving? We are given disposable income. Disposable. D stands for disposable, Y stands for income. The disposable income, we are given 480 francs. It is 480 francs. That is the disposable income given. And spend 360. Out of 480, what was spent? What was spent? Consumption. What was consumed? What was consumed is 360 francs. 360 francs. We are looking for the amount of money that was saved. Because to get the average propensity to save, we shall get saving divided by income. But we are not given saving in the question. We have to first look for saving. And how do we get the amount of money that was saved? How do we get the amount of money that was saved? To get saving, to get the amount of money that was saved, we shall get the disposable income minus consumption. We subtract the amount of money that was consumed minus consumption. We subtract the amount of money that was consumed to get saving. To get saving, we shall get the disposable income minus consumption. The disposable income is 480 minus what was consumed, which is 360 francs. Now, how much was saved? If you get 480 minus 360, you will get 120. 480 minus 360, it will give you 120. Now, saving is, what was saved is 120. This is the amount of money that was saved. And to prove it, that it is correct, in order to get income, in order to get the disposable income, we shall get consumption plus saving to get the income. If you get 360 plus 120, you will get a disposable income of 480. Meaning that our saving is correct. The amount of money that was saved is correct. Now, to get average propensity to save, we get saving divided by income. Now we have looked for saving, which is 120. Now, to get the average propensity to save, which is APS, average propensity to save, we shall get 120 divided by the income. And the disposable income is 480. Is 480. If you get 12 divided by 48, if you get 12 divided by 48, 12 divided by 48, we shall get 0.25. 0.25. Now, the average propensity to save, is 12 out of 48 or 0.25. This is the fraction of what was saved. Because average propensity to save is the fraction of the disposable income that is saved. That is average. That is how we get the average propensity to save. Learners, let's continue with our today's lesson. And our today's lesson, we are going to talk about demand for money, or liquidity preference, which is the same as liquidity preference. What is liquidity? First of all, what is liquidity? Liquidity. Liquidity preference. What is liquidity? Liquidity refers to the amount of money that is readily available for investment or spending. Liquidity refers to the amount of money, refers to the amount of money, refers to the amount of money, the amount of money, the amount of money readily available is the amount of money readily available for investment or spending. For investment or spending. That is liquidity or spending. The amount of money readily available for investment or spending. Or liquidity, that is the ease of converting an asset into cash. The ease of converting an asset into cash. That is liquidity. Or the amount of money available for investment or spending. Liquidity preference or demand for money. Demand for money is the desire by the people to hold money in cash or near cash form rather than investing it. People want to hold money in cash. They prefer holding money, keeping money, other than buying assets, other than investing it into assets, or other than buying assets. That is what we call liquidity preference. You have the money, but you don't want to buy an asset. You don't want to invest it in buying assets. You prefer holding it in cash. You prefer having cash other than investing. That is what is meant by demand for money or liquidity preference. The desire by the people to hold money in cash or near cash rather than investing. Now, the Keynesian theory, demand for money, after understanding the concept of demand for money, their motives. Why do people demand for money? And those motives were phrased by an economist called J.M. Keynes. J.M. Keynes. This was an economist that phrased these motives. J.M. Keynes was an economist called J.M. Keynes. He was called John Maynard. The full name is John Maynard Keynes, a great economist who phrased these reasons for demand for money. And what is a motive? Motives for demand for money. What is a motive? A motive is a reason for doing something. Motives for demand for money. The reason for doing something. A motive. Reason. It is a reason for doing something. A motive. A reason for doing something. Why do people demand for money? Why should people hold money in cash other than investing? What could be the reasons? Why is it that people want to keep money in cash, want to hold money in cash other than buying assets? What are those reasons that were phrased by Keynes? And there are three reasons why people prefer holding money in cash other than investing it, other than buying assets. One of the reasons, transaction motive. And what is a transaction? What is a transaction? The first reason is transaction motive. And what is a transaction? A transaction deals with buying and selling. Deals with buying and selling. A transaction deals with buying and selling of goods and services, or the buying and selling of commodities. That is a transaction. Why people demand for money? Why people desire to hold money in cash other than investing in assets? It's because of the transaction motive. They hold money in cash to cater for, to carry out day-to-day transactions. Every day they have to spend, especially on basic needs, like buying food, buying clothes. Now, people hold money to cater for day-to-day expenses, because every day you have to spend money, buying food, buying other necessities. Now, that's why people prefer to hold money in cash other than investing it, because every day they have to spend money on buying food, on buying clothes, and other basic needs. The second reason why people demand for money, it is the precautionary motive. The precautionary motive. People demand for money to cater for unforeseen circumstances like sickness, car breakdown, etc. What is a precaution? First of all, what is a precaution? A precaution. They demand money for precautionary motive. What is a precaution? A precaution is a measure taken in advance to prevent something dangerous. A precaution refers to a measure, a precaution, a measure taken in advance, a measure taken in advance to prevent something dangerous, to prevent something dangerous. That is a precaution, precautionary motive. It is a safeguard. You have money, you're keeping money as a safeguard in case of unforeseen circumstances, like sickness. People don't expect to be sick, to fall sick. That is something that is unexpected. Now, people hold money to cater for those unforeseen circumstances, like sickness, so that if you fall sick, you should have the money so that you're able to buy medicine or you're able to go to the doctor for treatment. The second example is car breakdown. Because like car breakdown, it is something that happens unexpectedly. That is why, in most cases, like people who own cars, when they are traveling, they should have money in their pockets. They should have some money in their pockets, so that if a car breaks down, is able to solve the problem. Now, why people demand for money, other than investing it in assets, it is for precautionary motive, to cater for unforeseen circumstances, like falling sick, like car breakdown, so that in case there is an unforeseen circumstance, you're able to solve that problem. That's why people hold money in cash other than investing it in assets. The third reason is speculative motive, to speculate. The word speculate, speculation motive, the speculation motive. To speculate, speculate refers to buying an asset with the name of making profits. You're speculating. Refers to buying an asset. In this case, refers to buying an asset. Refers to buying an asset. Refers to buying an asset with a name. With a name of making a profit. 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 To speculate, you're trying to predict that something can change. You're speculating. You're expecting that something can change. Now, the speculative motive, people demand for money for speculative motive. And the speculative motive depends on the interest rate on a bond. It depends on the interest rate on bonds issued by the government, those government securities, what we call the treasury bills and the bond. When the interest on a bond falls, the speculators prefer holding cash. And when interest on bonds increases, the speculators prefer holding bonds to cash. They are speculating. And what is a bond? What is a bond? What is a bond? A bond refers to a debt instrument. A bond refers to a debt instrument, a debt instrument issued by the government, government issued by the government to borrow money from the public. Issued by the government to borrow money from the public. To borrow money from the public. To borrow money from the public. That is what we call a bond. A debt instrument issued by the government to borrow money from the public. If I have money and I buy a bond, I'm lending money to the public. That is why they give you an interest after the maturity period. Because you have lent money to the government, and the government will give you an interest. There is a reward. That is what we call a bond. Now, a bond depends on the interest rate. People speculate with the name of making profits, which depends on an interest rate. Now, why people hold money in cash? When the interest rate on a bond is high, if the interest rate, the income expected, the income that will be earned on the bond is high, people will be encouraged to invest in bonds. They will buy bonds, which reduces the demand for money. Because the interest rate is high for a bond, people are going to invest in bonds, and this will reduce the demand for money. But when the interest rate of a bond reduces, the income on a bond is reducing, the reward is less on a bond, people will be discouraged to buy bonds. This will increase the demand for money. Now, instead of people buying bonds, they will keep money in cash because the reward on the bond is low. The income on a bond is low. And this is illustrated by the curve, which explains the speculative motive. There is a curve that explains the speculative motive, why people prefer to hold money in cash other than investing. Now, on the vertical axis, we indicated the interest rate, and on the horizontal is the quantity of money. And any curve must have an origin. That's why we have zero. Because when we start counting, we begin from zero. Then, at interest rate 1, the demand for money is low. It is M1 at interest rate 1. Because when the interest rate is high, the reward on a bond, the income on a bond is high, people will invest in bonds. This will encourage people to buy bonds, which reduces the demand for money. That's why the demand for money is low at M1. But when the interest rate on a bond reduces from interest rate 1 to interest rate 2, the demand for money will increase because people will be discouraged to invest in bonds. Now, instead of investing in bonds, they will hold money in cash because the interest rate on a bond is low. Now, when the interest rate is high, the demand for money is low. When the interest rate is low, the demand for money is high. And a point where the interest rate is low, to break the liquidity preference is what we call the liquidity trap. Liquidity trap. At this point, the interest is too low to break the liquidity preference, what we call the liquidity trap. Liquidity trap. The liquidity trap. Liquidity trap, it is a point where the interest rate is too low to break the liquidity preference. The interest rate is too low to encourage people to invest in bonds. Instead of investing in bonds, they will hold money in cash. Because the income on a bond is low, they will be discouraged to invest in bonds. That is what we call the liquidity trap. The point where the rate of interest is too low to break the liquidity preference is known as a liquidity trap. Learners, I expect you can be able to define demand for money and explain the reasons for demand for money. Before I end the lesson, I want to leave you with the assignment. As you're writing down the assignment, I can read through these questions. There are 2 questions. The first question is, what is liquidity preference? The second question, explain any 5 factors that influence demand for money. Let me repeat the question. Question 2 is, explain any factors that influence the demand for money. Thank you, learners, for being attentive. Thank you for watching. We meet next time.